Ghosts,
spirits,
demons,
reincarnation,
past lives.
Welcome to our show. This is Second Sight Radio. At 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're airing live from New York City for the next 2 hours. You are listening to DTMWickedRadio.com, and we have a great agenda this evening, as always, people. Vic, do we have a gemstone? I ask you every week.
We can have one if we get to it.
Okay. I can't promise you that we're going to get to it, though, but we'll try. Let's see. We do have a gemstone of the week if we get to it. There is the birthday segment, and there is a Church of Second Sight. And I think Victor's going to try and shut me up on this one, but I'm not going to let him. Anyway.
Chris, I think we need to start with a little breath work. I think you've been running. You got to your station. I want you to sit for a minute. I want you to take 3 deep and cleansing breaths at your own pace and level of comfort. Hold them for a second. Hold them a little bit.
One more.
It's not a race. We're going to have Catherine work with you when we start the interview. Okay? I think we need some breath work big time, my friend.
I'm feeling good today, Vic. I got to tell you, I'm feeling good.
I know you are.
Anyway, I'm Psychic Medium Chris George, and my fan page is Psychic Medium Chris George. If you like it, there's a very good chance you get a free reading. I give away about 10 a month. It's been going up because it seems like a lot of people need help. So, like the fan page, and like I said, there's a good chance you'll get a free reading. Victor's fan page is Victor the Voice Furman. Like I always say, with a voice like that, he has to have his own fan page. And that's it, man. We really appreciate our listeners. We're growing every single week since we've been here on DTM, kicking ass and taking names, like we always say. And again, we really, truly appreciate our listeners. All right, famous people born this week. Real quick, we have Shakira. We have Farrah Fawcett, Rosa Parks, Alice Cooper, Lawrence Taylor, Hank Aaron, Bob Marley, Babe Ruth, Ronald Reagan, Chris Rock, Garth Brooks, James Dean, and Nick Nolte. That's not a big group there, Victor.
That's right.
And my thought for the week is, if you are too occupied looking at what a person appears to be, you may never know who they truly are, and they might just be more than you ever imagined. That is my thought for the week. Victor, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. You never can judge a book by its cover.
I mean, it's fun to judge people every now and then. But
unless it's this book, and we don't want you to judge it. We want you to buy it, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
That sounds good. So, Vic, this week we had on Alexandra Holt.
No, we did not. That was too
much. You know what? I'm out of control. Who am I?
You need to do some breath work, Chris. Our guest last week was Jason Miller, author of the book Sex, Sorcery, and Spirit. Jason was a great guest. His book is wonderful, and it really delved into what they refer to as sacred sexuality and sexual magic, and I think our listeners really enjoyed that show.
Yeah, but I got to tell you something. I didn't expect him to drop some of the things he was dropping on that show. I mean, some of the words that I was not expecting that. It was like almost like the old Red Room that we used to host.
Well, he was very open, and I think our listeners appreciated that.
Yeah, he was good. I liked him a lot. He's a very cool guy, and a lot of great information. It was a great show.
Absolutely.
But here we are this week, and who do we have as a guest?
Chris, our guest this week is Catherine Dowling. And Catherine practiced as a breathwork psychotherapist for almost 20 years in Ireland and is a former president of the International Breathwork Foundation. Her new book gives us 5 practical tools for turning every experience into an opportunity for growth. And the name of the book, for those of us who are going to be watching on the video segment, is Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life. Please join me in welcoming Catherine Dowling. Good evening, Catherine.
Good evening, Victor and Chris. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. I can't wait to get into this interview. So, Vic, do you mind if I start this week?
Absolutely. Please do, Chris.
All right, Deanna.
Catherine.
No, I am so screwed up. I'm thinking of Deanna in the chat room. I'm out of control.
Well, I want to take a pause right now. Catherine, can you give Chris an exercise to center him and calm him down, please?
You take some slowly breaths through your nose and keep your mouth closed.
All right. I'm ready to go, Catherine. It's been a crazy day for me. I've been running around like a lunatic, but I'm okay now. I took a nice deep breath, and I'm good to go. So I'd like to know, can you please tell us about your background as a psychotherapist incorporating breath work?
Okay. I got into breath work back in the early 90s when I was looking for a job. And I was living in Ireland at a time when it was in parts of it had 80% unemployment. And my background is in education and history and English, but I heard somebody on the radio one day talking about breathwork and a breathwork training he was going to be starting. And I went along to the introductory night because it sounded interesting. And when I heard about it, I thought, wow, I want to do that for me, never mind work ethic. So I took the training, and pretty quickly before I had finished it, set up the practice, taking breathwork clients. It's a form of psychotherapy called reversing breathwork, and it uses breathing to get access to belief systems, memories, emotional problems that people might have and help them resolve. So that's how I got involved in breathwork.
Catherine, I recall that rebirthing, the practice of rebirthing, was very, very big 15 or 20 years ago here in the United States, or maybe even up to like 10 years ago. But it seems to have tapered off. Is that true, or is that just something in terms of the milieu of the work?
I think it's probably just lost prominence in that it's not being talked about so much. But yeah, there are plenty of schools and practitioners all around the U.S. And there's a movement called the Breathing Circle movement, which started only a few years ago, and where you can do breath work many, many locations around the world for very little money with a trained practitioner, but it's in a group.
I actually took part in a rebirthing practice about 20 years ago. Would you just describe for our listeners what the rebirthing session is like?
It's talking about what's on their mind, what's going on for them. And then they would usually lie down and do a particular deep breathing technique. It's a technique called conscious connected breathing. So you are normally not very aware of your breathing. It just goes on in the background. Becoming aware of it is the first step. And then we also we have little pauses at the top of the breath and when we exhale. It's about eliminating those pauses. So we have a circular breathing motion. It kind of increases your pace and volume a little. And from there, you just relax into it. And then from there, it's different for everybody every time to do it. So people can have physical sensations. They can morph into emotion. They can have profound insight. And a lot of times towards the end of it, they have what I, in my second book, have called radical awareness experience, which is like a spiritual or mystical experience towards the end of the session usually. The result is that when you're accessing your issues or your emotions or your belief systems on that very physical level, it brings about a change, often much quicker than if you talk only. You know, if you just talk like a spirit.
I remember it was a very profound experience for me when I looked for them about 20 years ago.
Yes, but it can be. Yeah.
So, Catherine, I wonder how common are experiences of radical awareness, spiritual awakening?
Well, when I was researching this book, I came across the Gallup poll from 2002, which surveyed that. They called it religious experiences, but there's mystical experiences of awakening, and they put it at 41% of Americans had those experiences, and they experienced and changed their life in a significant way. So they're a lot more common than people think they are.
All right. And what is a spiritual awakening like? Can you define that for us?
It's quite difficult to define without using poetry, because for people who have never experienced it, we're accustomed to thinking of ourselves as encapsulated in this little body, with this personality, and we're separate from other people and separate from nature. When our awareness expands into these kind of mystical, radical experiences, we realize that we're not encapsulated in this little body, that we're not separate. It's not like a psychotic merging that the trees are talking to me, and, you know, that can be quite frightening for people who have psychiatric problems. It's not that at all. It's an awareness of self as being part of a much greater whole, of a life source, a life energy. If people have a religious conviction, it's an encounter with God. But if you don't have a concept of God, it's an encounter with the cosmos, the life force. And it's an amazing experience of feeling love and hell, that peace. No matter how our life is in turmoil, we're at that still point of peace where we feel connected. And it's beyond personality. It's beyond body. I can only describe it as spiritual.
Now, if someone does not have a particular religious background or something of that nature, what is the experience like for them?
I guess I could say how it's like for me, because I did grow up Catholic with a religious background, but I would say I no longer have any concept of God. And it's just as I said, it's a wonderful experience of connection where you know that you are loved by a benevolent universe.
So it's more of an all-encompassing rather than specifically a deity. It's more of an all-encompassing connection, energetic connection.
Yes, and I think where the deity comes in is that we feel connected to the universe or the cosmos or whatever word we use to describe it. But a lot of people see that then as God. That's their experience of God. Mm. I think that's at the core of religion before they start building rules and regulations.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the connectedness and that sense of the oneness of everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris?
So I want to know, how does it change the way we experience life?
Well, I think narrow the book from personal and professional experience, and for people who are looking for something more in life. They're trying to make changes in some parts of their life. Sometimes a whole life change, sometimes a small bit. Relationships, in jobs, in finances. Maybe they feel lonely, isolated, shy. Maybe they're caught up in repeated patterns in relationships. Or maybe they just want to feel more alive. And how these experiences help, how awareness helps, is that we keep looking outside ourselves for the solutions. We keep looking outside ourselves for other things to change, to acquire something, to let go of something, then we'll be happy. But what awareness does is tell us happiness is only inside. So let's pull right in and see what's going on in here. And through various practices, awareness gives us the power to make changes in our lives. The catch is, the change isn't always what we think we want to do. We go inside and we trust, and then we take the next step that comes to us. And that step mightn't be what we think should be. I guess I could give an example of a couple of people I worked with, which I talk about in the book. Two sisters, the Radical Awareness book, two women that we call sisters because they've been friends from childhood. But they were married to real brothers, to brothers. The brothers were not interested in anything that didn't involve God. So they weren't interested in going to dinner, going to movies, going to vacations, nonetheless God was involved. And the women spent many, many sessions in groups complaining about their husband. And finally, they got the awareness that this is the reality of who my husband is. He's not going to change. And that was very hard to say. So they had to stop looking outwards and start looking inwards with awareness. Now, they went through a difficult period facing that reality, then going even deeper into mourning the loss of the 30 years or so they had trying to change these men. And then they had to realize that if they wanted their life to change, they had to really change it. And if they wanted to go on vacation, they had each other to go on vacation with. And that kind of thing. Yeah, that's the first step. They started off thinking, if I go through all this therapy, my husband will change. The reality is their husband didn't change, they did. And what's the next step? The next step for them could have been divorce. I lost contact with them, so I don't know whether it was or not. But that's the opposite of what they want. But they come out of the awareness experience much happier if they can accept that they're going in a direction that they didn't anticipate.
I'm just wondering, after this awareness, this awakening to the fact that they cannot change those things outside of themselves, they have to change themselves, is there a period of mourning that takes place for some people?
I think so, yeah. Particularly, I think if it involves relationships, and relationships that you have spent a long time trying to make work. And but that trying, at some point, people come to a decision, okay, I've done all I can, nothing to change. So I have to look inside and change me. And there is a sadness that, well, I've spent so many years trying. I could have been doing other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What else happens when the spiritual experience passes?
This is a lovely high period where you feel wonderful. And Eckhart Tolle, in his book, The Power of Now, talks about such an experience lasting 2 years. The longest it lasted for me was about 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then you're back on Earth. Mm. But what you have experienced is what's possible. You have been touched by love and by peace. And that in and alone changes the way you are. It makes you feel more confident. Well, if we all felt totally lost in life, how differently would we behave?
Captain, what does that 6 wheels feel like to you?
I felt like I could move mountains. And nothing mattered except just being here in this moment right now. Everything I craved was not important. Nothing was important, but just existing in this very moment. And it felt wonderful.
And did you resume your regular work life during that time?
Oh, yeah. So I was just going around feeling totally alive and vibrant and just held and wanting for nothing.
Yeah.
So, the craving and the striving and all that disappeared. And it came back at the end of about 16, but in a very different way. In a way that I thought, okay, life is possible, life can be vibrant and alive and full.
Victor, can you imagine the whole world doing that?
For 1 day, let alone 6 weeks or 2 years.
One day would be amazing.
What a transformation would take place.
Well, I'm telling you, maybe people would get used to it and it could become a trend. I mean, that would be beautiful, no?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Captain. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, Vic.
What happens when you come back to Earth? Yeah. The more you have these experiences, I've made 5 practices out of it for people to put into practice in their daily lives. The more you put awareness into practice, we all tend to have highs and lows. The more the lows bottom out at a higher level, because we have learned to deal with them, we have learned to trust that there is light at the end of the tunnel. This down period will end. And what's more, it's one of the most fertile times for growth for me if I can stay in the darkness, stay in the difficult times until I grow out of them, rather than meditating away, whatever medication you choose to use.
What other ways can we bring that experience and that change into the way we engage with daily life?
So there are 5 practices. The first one is becoming aware and realizing that we need to focus inwards a bit more and expand our awareness, because if we are tunnel vision on something, we miss a lot of opportunities that come our way that we just don't see because we're not looking around, we're looking on one thing. So it can help us open up to all the possibilities that life offers, to actually see them. Then it helps us to be in this moment. Just by getting in this moment right now, you feel more alive and more powerful. So those are 2 practices that you can do anywhere, anytime. And the more we practice that, the more we have options in dealing with people.
Let's actually talk a little bit more about each of these as you outlined them. So the first practice, talk a little bit about the first practice, please.
Well, the first practice is awareness, and there's a full spectrum of awareness. So it can start off with something with being aware that I'm hungry or I need to go to the toilet. You know, people often don't even realize that. And then it goes more and more inside. So you're starting to look at how am I feeling physically, how am I feeling emotionally in any given situation. Am I feeling anger or fear or, sadness? What's the situation? So rather than reacting, say I'm having an argument with you and I feel upset, rather than reacting back at you, I look inside me and think, what am I really feeling here? And then awareness deepens even further into what's the origins of that fear or anger that predates my knowing you. It predates our relationship. So you're getting into belief systems about yourself, and this is where it starts to get people. So the third practice is growing from adversity, growing from the darkness. So you've got to be able to go into the pain to a certain degree in order to look around in it and see what it's about and let it transform it. A lot of times we try to medicate it away, and not just with drugs, but with blaming other people, with reacting back in anger, with helplessness. There are ways we can medicate away our pain, and if we don't do that, if we stick with the pain for long enough, we'll find out what's going on and we can transform it. So we come out the other end stronger and maybe different, and wanting different things, seeing things differently. But it's very hard to go into that without trust. Trusting that all will be well. It may not all be what I want it to be, but it all will be well. I will be well. I will come out of this better than I went into it. So those are the practices. And then when you get to the area of awareness that drop into radical awareness, into a mystical experience, that's when you really experience what life can be. And then you can take even a memory of that back into life, into daily life.
Well, Catherine, I want to know, how does being in the present moment change the way we live?
I think most of the time we're living in the past or the future, or we're living somewhere where our body isn't. So we're ruminating about what has happened back then, or we're anticipating, or we're scheming, and we're not actually fully here. But if you can do exercises, meditative exercises, body awareness exercises, the first thing you do is feel more alive. You're in the present. So you have more energy and more aliveness. But the other thing is, you can, if for example, you tell me I'm stupid, right? We're having an argument and you tell me I'm stupid. If I'm in the past, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's done this again so many times, and so did two other people, and so did my mother, and all that is coming in. Or if I'm in the future, I'm thinking, oh, he doesn't care about me, and he's going to break up our friendship, and, you know, it's all catastrophe. If I'm in the present, I can hear you say, you're stupid, and I can listen to my own reaction, and I can say, hang on a minute, what he thinks of me doesn't really matter. It's what's triggered in here. And so I will have a lot more options to respond to you. If I'm in past or future, I'll probably respond to you with anger and you have a big fight. If I'm in the present moment, I can have a lot more options. I can ask you, well, why do you think that? Because I haven't had the weight of the past feeding my anger. Why did you say that? And so then we might actually be able to progress in our friendship. We might be able to get to know each other a bit better and work out something so you don't tell me I'm stupid again.
Interesting.
So, are there a lot of good books on awareness and living in the moment? What does radical awareness add to, and what does it add to what those books tell us?
Oh, there are lots of good books on awareness and lots of good books on living in the moment. What I've tried to do is distill the experience, the radical awareness experience, into 5 practices that people can understand, to break it down, to tear it apart and say, here's the wisdom that comes from it. And then to give lots of stories and examples and exercises to put those practices into daily life. So it's very much tied up with the psychology of how we live. So I try to connect what people categorize as spirituality and what people categorize as psychology in a very practical way. So I go through a lot of issues that prevent us from living fully and living an engaged life, like anger and fear and thinking like a victim, the values that might keep us stuck, the roles that we fall into. Because very often people don't recognize what they're doing in their lives. They don't recognize how they're contributing to the life that they have. And what I try to do is say, here are some signs that you suffer from chronic anger, or that I suffer from chronic fear, or I'm stuck in my victim thinking. These are the signs. This is how you know it. And then this is what to do about it in terms of deepening awareness and acting out of love and being able to go through the pain that's often involved in self-examination. So, for me, that's what it adds to the conversation, a very practical element and practical exercise.
Our guest is Catherine Dowling. Her book is called Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life. And Catherine, please tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and your work and where they can get your book.
You can get my book on Amazon and in most bookshops, the bigger bookshops. Or they can go to my website, which is catherinedowling.com. And if they want to sign on for the website, they get a free starter guide to practicing awareness. Or they can go to my Facebook page.
Okay. And we always say every week that we know that we can get books at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. But we encourage you to go out to your local bookstore, which is so important to the local economy in your community and the social life of your community, and say, we want a copy of Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life by Catherine Dowling. And the guy behind the counter says, I don't have that. You say, order it for me, because my friends and I all want to buy the book and have our own little circle here and practice our techniques. So please order it for me now. And you're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network. And we will have a video simulcast in a couple of days on TeslaWhipMedia.com. For right now, we're continuing with the interview. Mr. Chris George, it's your question.
It's my question. I want to know, how do we grow out of adversity?
There's a long history of telling people to do that in most major religions. I think it was St. John of the Cross, the Catholic saint, who coined the phrase the dark night of the soul. That it would be wonderful if we could learn and grow while being really happy all the time. That would be amazing. But human beings seem to need to be kicked into growth every so often. So something happens. Somebody dies, which we obviously have no control over. Somebody leaves us. You lose a job. We have all sorts of difficult things happen. If we can just deepen our awareness around them, we can start looking at how I contributed to this happening. How did I contribute to losing my job? We may not have contributed to it. We may have been the victim of the economic downturn. But I get let go and the person next to me doesn't. Mm-hmm. How do I contribute to the demise of a relationship? So it's all in looking at what our contribution was to it. We're not 100% responsible for it, but there is a role we play. And we learn from adversity because we're forced to look at it and forced to look at how I shaped this event. And when we look at that, that changes us because we're forced to look at who we are. And belief patterns we might have that I'm not as good as other people, I'm not as important. All sorts of beliefs that can be quite easily varied. When we look at those, we have the option of changing them in many ways. And when we change them, that's when life on the outside starts to change. So rather than looking outward and changing it, we change ourselves, and then it changes almost without being forced to, because we're different. So the next time we meet people, make friendships and stuff like that, we're different. Therefore, the friendship or the relationship is different. So that's a way in which people grow out of pain. Classic one is the kids grow up and leave home. And the parents are stuck there in this big empty house, and they haven't really connected with each other for that long, for many years, and so there's the empty nest syndrome. You can go under with that. You can feel totally useless in life and empty. Or you can dig into, why do I feel this way? Where is this pain taking me? And find new aspects of yourself, new talents, new impetus to go out and meet new people. So your life can actually be transformed by that thing. But it's not nice when it happens. But if we could look at pain as an incubator for growth, I think we might have a different attitude towards it. I'm not talking about psychological and emotional pain rather than chronic physical pain.
Is it always advisable to embrace dark or difficult times?
I've had clients where I've advised them to go to their doctor and get some antidepressants because they were in such a state of despair that they needed them to be released. I can't think of any one of them that actually followed my advice. But there are times, I think, where medication can give you a little relief from suffering. as long as you don't take that medication as the only step forward, as long as you work in other ways alongside it. So I think it's down to everybody, how much in despair they are, how much in pain are they, and can they handle it? And if not, take the help that's there. But generally speaking, for your average day-to-day disappointment, pain, fears, yeah, I think it is advisable to go through it. But it's not everybody. How you know yourself better than anybody else. Don't push yourself to the point of no return.
Let's look at that a little deeper. Let's say that I'm dealing with a situation where I'm for whatever reason in my life, my background, my upbringing, I'm an angry person. I'm constantly angry. Talk me through the process of facing this, confronting it, bringing it out, and working with it.
I find that people suffering from chronic anger find it very difficult they're constantly blaming others. Others are responsible for everything. And I've had people who are the anger has so shaped the way they see the world that you pass them a compliment and they're angry with you. So there's that level of anger. If such a person, a chronically angry person, can face the reality that maybe it's not all about the world, maybe it's something about me, that's the start of it. So that's the start, the first step they take in moving inward. Now, I find that anger is like a secondary emotion. It's covering something else. It's medicating away a deeper hurt. And the process of going into those deeper hurts is the darkness. And you may need help of a therapist or a spiritual advisor to help you get through that. But if you dig down underneath that anger, you often find shame and pain from rejection. You can often find people who are beaten as children, who are badly treated as children. And going in there can be very difficult, and it can be a long process, because you're going into how do I feel about my parents, how do I feel about things that happened to me as a child, and then how have I treated other people when I'm acting out of my anger. And that can be a source of shame. So with anger, it's a very nasty emotion to stuff that's much deeper. And in particular, shame is very insidious. It goes right into the body. And so that's when I, as a therapist, would talk people through it and get them to breathe through it. So that in breathing, they come in contact with the anger, and then they come in contact with the real emotion that lies in them. And it's important to get to those buried emotions.
I've shared this story before. I had a friend years ago who had an upbringing in which he had a very difficult childhood. And his response to anything that challenged his belief systems or challenged his sense of security was to get angry and start shouting at whoever was confronting him or pushing his buttons. And there was a group dinner we had one evening, and someone at the table had mentioned something of a political nature, which challenged this man's system. And he stood up and started screaming at the top of his lungs, "You're an idiot, how can you talk that way?" And his poor wife is trying to climb under the table and hide, and people are obviously getting very uncomfortable, and most people are getting up and basically walking away. He finished his tirade, and I walked around the table, and I put my arms around him, held him tight against me, and I said, "I still love you." And he started crying. And that was, for him, was the beginning of a tremendous healing. But I understand what you're saying about people who use that anger and use those outbursts as a way of protecting themselves from really experiencing feelings.
And unfortunately, other people's reaction to anger is the opposite of what you have. But the reaction you had is what they need. But it's very hard when you're on the receiving end of someone's anger to realize there is a hurt person underneath here.
Yeah.
That needs hope and love.
To realize that it's not about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but come on, the truth of the matter is most people aren't going to do that. But you're one of the special people. You're all heart. Everything about you is about being good to people and whatnot. Even if you're being attacked, and for the most part, when somebody attacks, you're not thinking about giving them a hug. I mean, would it be better? Yeah, probably. But is it going to happen most of the time? Probably not. It's sad, but I think that's the truth, though. What do you guys think? Am I crazy?
No, I think that's the reaction most people have is get far enough away. So
right.
And so the other person is left in their anger. And it's very few people who can, go up and give someone a hug.
Right, well, what Victor did to that guy was pretty much just kind of throw him completely off balance. And, Victor was there to pretty much catch him, and he had an awakening, which is a beautiful thing. And if we could do that more often, that would be an even more beautiful thing. I just don't know how, too many people are so hung up on everything today. People are angry. People are angry at the world. People are angry at what's going on around the world, and they don't know how to give people hugs. It's sad, but I think that's just a simple fact right there.
You know what? If everybody did it once, if everybody tried that once, for all of our listeners, if someone is saying something that's challenging you, is acting out or something like that, rather than running away or shouting back, try giving them a hug or just listening quietly, patiently, and when they're finished saying, you know what, that's okay, I understand what you're going through, and see how that affects them. See how that changes it.
How much, man?
I think one of the reasons is people take it personally.
Yeah.
It's a level of awareness for us not to take anger personally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great teaching. What was that old expression? What you think about me is none of my business, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
What's funny is I give people readings all the time, and I tell them this, and their first thing, pretty much what they all say to me is, it's a lot easier said than done. And they're right, it is easier said than done, but if you could just find it within yourself for even 5 seconds to just not handle it the way you normally would by attacking back, I think that would be one step in the process of maybe it becoming something that people do, normally. Maybe not. I mean, it's a good thought anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the first step in changing the dynamic, changing the pattern.
Which leads into our next question, Chris.
Yeah, I want to know, what is spiritual trust, and how does it differ from what we normally think as trust?
Well, I guess we normally think of trust as I trust you, or you trust me, and sometimes you're going to let me down, and I'm going to feel betrayed and hurt as a result. And we all let each other down trust-wise from time to time. Spiritual trust is kind of like spiritual love. It's got nothing to do with you or me. It's me trusting in life, trusting that all will be well. That's a famous phrase from Julian of Norwich in England, the famous mystic, all will be well. And we kind of trust life holds us. And the experience of radical awareness shows us what being held is like. So we trust that life holds us, that all will turn out. Maybe not as I expect it to, but it will turn out well. And so it removes this business of, I trust you and you let me down and now I'm betrayed and angry and hurt. But on a practical psychological level, a lot of times we get hurt because we don't want to see who the other person is. Right in the beginning, there are warning signs. There are signals everywhere. This is who this person is, and we choose to ignore them. Lots of times early in relationships, we have the warning signs. But we're in love, and we really want this to work out, so we ignore anger. We ignore somebody who's going to blame us because it's something they did and not what we did. Those are all signs that things might go wrong. But we choose to put our trust in that person, and then we get hurt when things do go wrong. But the difference between the two is one is dependent on another person, and the other, the spiritual trust, is trust in the universe. Trusting myself, trusting the process of growth. And it's greatly supported by experiences of the radical experience of awareness, where we do know we are held and we are loved, and how differently that can make us feel in our daily life. We're not protecting ourselves too much.
I'm curious that, as you had mentioned, the fact that when you have your experience, you don't connect it specifically with a deity, but this universal energy or universal love. Within the context of your experience, do you ever encounter any energy beings?
Yeah, occasionally I have. I remember that one of the first times I was in somebody's house, and suddenly I saw this 8-foot man standing in the corner of the room. The first time I had seen something, and my heart started pounding, and I was frightened. And I had this almost silent communication with him. That he looked at me and he said, "I know I'm frightening you, so I'm going to disappear." And he disappeared. And I said it to the person whose house I was in. I just said, "I think I've seen something." And she described him exactly as I had seen him, because she had seen him many times. So, yeah, that's my experience.
Did you have a sense of who this was, or did she know who this was?
No, she just felt it was somebody who lived in her house, and he was benevolent and kind and a pleasant person to have around, and showed himself every so often.
That's a beautiful story, but not necessarily a disembodied human spirit.
No, it certainly didn't look like a human. I mean, it looked like a man, a male, but 8 foot tall.
Okay.
You know, and glowing gold.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Very nice. Chris?
Yes,
I want to know, does awareness help us deal with anger? Good question.
Well, anger, as we've talked about, is a secondary emotion.
Well, let me give you a scenario. Okay, like my girlfriend. All right, tonight she had a huge blowout with her daughter because her daughter was driving her crazy with her math homework, and my poor girlfriend just kind of lost her mind. How does awareness help to deal with this anger?
Take a deep breath. Yell at somebody. Yeah, that's kind of a scenario that often happens with parents and children. The child is not doing what you want them to do. There's a dynamic built up, and they're very good at pushing your buttons and saying just the right thing to get you going. And in doing that, they get out of what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pattern, and you can feel angry and hurt and guilty, because parenting seems to be a very fertile ground for guilt. And so, in the moment, there's probably not much your girlfriend can do. She got angry, she acted out of it, and so forth. But if she could pull back when she's in a quiet time and her child is not around, and look at, what did the child do that pushed my button? And what are the buttons I have to push? And then, how did I contribute? What did I say in this little argument that got that reaction? And then, what did I react to what my child said? And it's almost like a dance that goes on. But in order to break the dance, to step out of the ballroom, you've got to start looking inward and look at what buttons were pressed. And then deal with those buttons. So that the next time it happens, and it will,
and it will,
the next time it happens, the reaction might be different. You might say something different. The child then gets thrown off because the pattern's not working.
Yeah.
And and just to maintain that. But like you, Victor, it's having an odd, different reaction that's unexpected.
Yeah.
And then to try and break that cycle. That happens a lot in all sorts of relationships.
Years ago, and I'm going to date myself now, well, not maybe in the 70s, there was a book that came out on a practice called transactional analysis. And it said that on each side of a relationship, you can react as a parent, an adult, or a child.
Yeah.
And that if you have adult-to-adult communication, that's the best flow. But if it goes parent to child or child to parent, that's where the communication breaks down. And so that when you're in each of these situations, and it could be with another adult that you become a child or vice versa, that in each of these situations you have to see where the conversation or the transaction is taking place, on what level. And if you can catch that and recognize that, you can remedy that situation. You remember that, the transactional analysis?
Yes, I remember that. That was huge.
That was in the 70s. Yeah, Chris was a mere tyke back then. He doesn't remember this. He was.
I was born in '68. I'm 46. So I'm not that much younger than you, Victor.
No,
12 years, 13 years of this.
A lot of years.
You're very young looking, though.
What's that?
You see? She's very. Yeah, maybe. I've been told I look, 40, which is 6 years younger. I'll take that. Should I take the next question, Victor? What do you want it?
No, please, go ahead.
All right. Many people feel powerless to change their lives. How does radical awareness help?
By helping you analyze the transactions and go inside, look at how I'm contributing to this. Several exercises in the book where if you're a visual person, they work best, because if you can take the scenario like your girlfriend and her child and run that almost like a movie with actors playing parts, you can analyze who said what and what the reaction was. And you can analyze objectively how I contributed to this. So you can see who's being the child and who's being the adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that level of awareness can help you realize, okay, if I want to change this little pattern, this is what I have to do. And you can practice that throughout life in every situation, in work, in parenting, in relationships. But the deeper level of awareness is dealing with the issues that cause you to react to things. So it works on both levels. So that we can have the detachment, the mature detachment, to give the person a hug. To not get angry in the moment. It's very hard when people press the buttons not to react with anger.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a lot of self-work behind the scenes. So
Catherine, how often do you get angry? Tell me the truth.
Pardon?
How often do you get angry? Tell me the truth.
How often? Maybe once a week.
All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good,
Chris, and I get angry also, but there's a difference, and I think this difference comes with the practice that I've had for the last 30 years, and also maturity. And that's that things that used to trigger me and push my button when I was a younger man, I've come to recognize what they are and where they're coming from and what buttons they're pushing in me. And so rather than react in anger, I stop, I take a breath,
right,
and process what's going on in the moment.
And I'll tell you what else you're doing. You call me on Skype and you vent to me.
That's right. And you do the same.
Yes, I sure do. That's why we're such good friends. We're
venting partners. We should have a convention, right?
I'm telling you, we definitely should.
Chris, I go around the house venting.
Do you know?
And just give it all out, get the anger all out, and then look at what's the wise way to react. And it's really easy to respond with anger to email.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what it is with that, with emails and inboxes is, you don't get how they're trying to say things. So, you have to figure it out for yourself what kind of anger or what kind of angle their words are coming at you at, and it's very easy to mistake those words and to get angry. So,
especially when people use uppercase letters for everything.
Oh yeah, that drives me out of my mind. But you know what, Catherine? You know what I do? I just breathe, and I'm good to go.
There you go.
Good.
Vic,
Chris, I have to say that, Chris and I have been friends now for about 3.5, almost 4 years. And I have to say that, Chris has looked to me as a mentor. And he and I have gone through several issues together in his life and my life. And he's really come a long, long way. A really long way.
I don't know how the hell I did it, but you want to know what's funny? I'll tell you what's funny. When I get crazy, I have nobody to really talk to. So I talk to Victor. Now, I'm a psychic medium. I have people that come to me all the time, and I hear so many problems. Every day, all I hear is problems. And, sometimes it's good to have somebody to talk to just vent out, and that's what I think Victor and I are to each other at times.
Absolutely.
Which is good to have.
And on that note, we're coming up to the close of the first hour. Our guest is Catherine Dowling, author of the book, Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life. Catherine, again, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about your work.
Amazon, iTunes, iStore, but also, as you said, go into your local bookshop, the independent, family-owned bookshops, and ask them to order. Give them new business. And also at my website, catherinedowling.com, they've got the free starter guide to awareness.
That's wonderful. And we're going to be coming back in our second hour, and Chris is going to have his Church of... Chris does a thing called the Church of Second Sight every week, Catherine. It's the first segment of the second hour. And he uses the Church of Second Sight for some of the venting, and he does it very, very well. So eventually, we'll get to the Church of Second Sight coming up in the second hour. And I just want to say that he's psychic medium Chris George. I am Victor the Voice Furman. Our wonderful guest is Catherine Dowling, and you're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network, and you'll be watching this in a video playback on TeslaWolfMedia.com in the days to come. And we will be back with the second hour of Second Sight Radio in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody, and stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Second Comedian Chris George. I'm joined by the first hour. We were interviewing Catherine Dowling, and we will continue to interview her for the second hour. Her book is Radical Awareness. We're having a great time. But you know what, people? Let me say something. Once you get in our chat room, you know, the chat room is cool. We have, let me see, right now we have about 10 people there. You know what? That's embarrassing. Get in the chat room. We have a good chat room. We use questions from them. You know, we interact and get in the chat room. I don't know how else to say it, but get in the friggin' chat room. Anyway, Victor, my church is Second Sight. Now, I have a feeling you're going to try and put the mute button on me.
I'm not gonna stop you, Chris. I'm gonna love you through this.
Okay. And if you feel like at some point I need to breathe, just interrupt me and tell me, Chris, breathe. All right?
You got it.
All right. I got a pet peeve. You want to know what pet peeve is? I'm going to tell you. People on Facebook. You know, now, Victor, I can't throw you into this because I don't know your situation completely. But my situation is I am a professional psychic medium. I get paid for what I do. That being said, I do more things for free than I do for money because I can't turn people away. I have a very hard time saying no to people that need help. I can't do it, you know? So if they don't have money, you know what? I'm okay with that. I will gladly help you, and I do it every freaking day. Victor, you know, every week I say, I give about 10 free readings a month. That's bullshit, okay? I say that because I don't want it to sound like so much, but I'm going to tell the people the truth. I probably help 30 or 40 people a month without taking a dime from them, okay? Now, I know there's some people out there that say, psychic shouldn't take money. You know what? I say, it's my ass. You worry about yourself. I worry about myself. I didn't take a vow of poverty. I have a gift. I use it. It's how I support my family. If you like it, fine. If you don't, I couldn't care less. It's irrelevant to me. Now, that being said, all the people that I help, you want to know what I ask of them? What do you think I ask of them, Victor?
You asked them. I know what you asked them. You asked them that if I give you advice, please listen to it. Please use it.
Yeah, I say that. I also say this. I would like for you to do just one thing for me. Write something nice about me. So I could put it on my fan page because, you know what, I just did something nice for you. I helped you. Do something nice for me. Let me put out there that, I helped you, and that's it. That's all I want because that's one hand washing the other. This month, I'm telling you, I had to, last month, okay, we'll say. Last month, I helped 40 people. How many people do you think wrote something nice to me? Well, they wrote things to me saying, thank you, Chris, you're amazing. Thank you for your help, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't write what I asked them to do, is write something nice that I could put out on my page. How many do you think wrote something to me?
Out of 40?
Yeah.
3.
2.
Good close.
2. Okay? Now, you know what? That's disheartening to me. That bothers me. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't bother me. I don't know. That's why I'm throwing it out there because you're always the voice of reason. We have Catherine on. She's going to tell me to breathe. I'm okay. And I'll take advice. I'll listen. You know, do you think I'm out of line for being upset that, I'm helping somebody that I'm not getting back what I give? I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for somebody to just say, you know what, Chris George, out of the kindness of his heart, helped me when I needed help. I was, whatever you want to write. Am I out of line for asking for that and then being upset when I don't get it?
I'm going to let our guest answer that question first. Catherine, what's your opinion on that, Catherine?
I think he's not out of line. If you get something like all you're asking is a very small thing. But getting upset over it is maybe something that you might like not to do.
I try. It's not easy, Captain. I try. I bite my tongue and you know what? You want to know what bothers me the most? When I'm on the phone with them, they say, okay, as soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm going to write something beautiful about you and I'm going to send it to you. And then a month later, guess what? I still don't have it. That's just kind of, I don't know. I think it's kind of shitty. Yeah?
I think there's a message there for you, Chris. Okay? And I think the message is that when you do something, everything in life is an exchange of energy, whether it be money for labor or money for services or goods in exchange for labor or services, whatever it might be. And I think that when you're very generous, and that's a wonderful thing. But I think in your case, that generosity, the way you're expressing your generosity, cannot be attached to receipt of something in return unless you are a little less generous with what you're doing. Because quite frankly, I found, and I give away a lot, as you know. I give, and I don't do this professionally. I don't do the psychic work or the healing work professionally. I give it as I'm called to give it. But what I give out, I never anticipate or expect anything to come back to me. If it does, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, there's no attachment to the return. I think in your case, because it is your livelihood, it is your profession, I think that you have to change your rules of engagement with clients. And I really think that people are expecting you to give it away, and therefore, with the expectation of receiving something for nothing, they're giving nothing in return. And I think that's the lesson for you here. Catherine, what do you think about that?
Because when I ran a practice in reversing breathwork, I used to give discounts really easily if people couldn't afford or said they couldn't afford it. Those were the very people who got left out of the experience. And it often showed up and said, oh, well, I don't have it this week. Can I pay you a bit extra the next time? And then no.
Right.
I think the exchange of energy, even if it's only a very small amount, it has to have clear boundaries around it.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, and I've said this before. Victor's heard me say this before. Catherine, I know you don't know too much about what Victor and I do, but I'm an exorcist, and Victor is also an exorcist. We work together, and I've done an exorcism for a cup of coffee because people didn't have money. Randy, they said, I have nothing to give you. I said, could you make me a cup of coffee, me and my team, could you make us a pot of coffee? Yeah? Okay, that's good enough. It's not about the money. It's about, I think it's more about the respect. I feel like I get the feeling that I'm being disrespected when that happens. That's the bottom line. I guess that's something I need to work out.
I would say that that's the root of your anger, is being disrespected.
Exactly. I mean, I have one more thing to rant about, but maybe I'll hold off on it.
No, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell you another thing I'm really pissed off about is, you know what? I got 800 freaking friends on Facebook. Victor has another 800 friends on Facebook. River Wildfire, who's my co-host, one of my co-hosts on the show tomorrow night, has probably 2,000 friends on Facebook. How many of them are in the friggin' chat room, Victor? How many of them are in the chat room listening to our show? All the people we help, all the people we give joy to, we put videos out there, we teach, we put out information, we put out a great friggin' show, we help everybody, and we tell them, get in the chat room! They're never in the chat room! 10 friggin' people! We got 5,000 friends between us, hundreds of thousands of listeners, and how many are in the chat room?
Okay. Take a breath. Chris, take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. Okay. I'm going to tell you something, Chris. We have somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million listeners, okay? They don't have to be in the chat room as long as they're listening. If they want to come in the chat room, that's fine. I don't demand them to be in the chat room.
Oh, man, I'll give them a pass.
I'd rather have them listening than being in the chat room.
Why do you want them in the chat room?
Why? Because I like them in the chat room. Because, there's times when they come up with great questions for our guests. Maybe I can do your curveball, Catherine. Maybe somebody's going to come up with a question that's going to stump you. And I would love that, to see you fumbling around until you get the, that makes for great radio.
Chris, the same reason that you're upset about not seeing a lot of faces in the chat room or names in the chat room is the same reason you get upset when people don't respond for the readings that you give. It's the same motivation.
It all comes down to that. And ever since you gave me the name, the Godfather of Psychic Medium, I took the respecting to the whole next level, Victor. I blame you for this, and that's the bottom line. That's my church's Second Sight. It's all Victor's fault.
Catherine, I just want to say, when Chris and I first met, and I saw his persona, and there's a photo of him with a gold ring and a cigar in his hand, wearing a suit, I dubbed him the Godfather of Psychic Mediums. He gives you a reading you can't refuse. And ever since I did that, his whole affect has changed. He's a totally different human being.
And embraces their disimprovement.
I should also let you know that Victor is one of my closest friends in the world. I have a lot of friends, okay? Well, I have a lot of people that are acquaintances. I have a handful of friends Victor is part of that very small handful of friends. Love him like he's my older brother, and I know he'll be a part of my life forever. All right, enough with the lovey-dovey stuff. I mean,
Chris, the feeling's mutual.
I mean, I don't like the whole mushiness.
Chris, reintroduce our guest.
Our guest is Catherine Dowling. Her book is Radical Awareness. And people, you need to go buy the book. I mean, it's an outstanding book. You need to buy it. And you know I wouldn't endorse it if I didn't like it. So there you have it. Victor, why don't you take over?
Okay, Catherine. You know, we just had New Year's about a month ago, and we often make resolutions to change something about ourselves or our lives, but we can't seem to follow through. I know that some of the resolutions that some friends of mine made on New Year's Eve are broken the next day, so they don't follow through. How does awareness help us to respect and maintain and follow through with the changes that we say we're going to make in our lives?
Oh, I suppose in a number of ways. A lot of the New Year resolutions, one of the most common ones is to lose weight. It's also, yeah, me too. It's the one that falls by the wayside by about February. And in part, like there's different motivations for wanting to lose weight. If you're overweight, it kind of weighs you down and puts pressure on your joints, and you may not be able to be as agile as you want to. And if that's your pure motivation for losing weight, you'll probably be able to stick with it. But a lot of us try to lose weight out of self-criticism. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. If I lose weight, my boyfriend or girlfriend will love me a lot more. You know, it's all that kind of negative motivation. One of the experiences of radical awareness is total acceptance of who I am right now, unconditional love. If I can do that, if I can love myself, not only will I not need to lose weight anymore, but I won't comfort eat because I don't need the comfort, which means I will lose weight without trying. So that's one of the ways awareness can help with resolutions, but resolutions often involve achieving, changing and achieving and grabbing and getting in order to make life better. That is not part of a radical awareness experience. The experience is the one of here now is perfect. The way I am now is perfect. And you can get into an argument about that, well, the way I am is not perfect and I should change. But then you're getting into the negative motivation for changing again. If we can, and it's a tall order to accept ourselves as we are right now. We do it imperfectly. But the more we do that, the more we will actually change without forcing it. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, but the whole self-acceptance thing is a work in progress for most of our lives.
So, Catherine, I want to know, what is at the bottom of the experience of radical awareness?
It's exactly that. It's love. It's a feeling of love that is not dependent on being a nice person or a good person or a successful person. It's not dependent on anything except just being. We're created as essences, human essence, and that's the beautiful, and that's the love. So I think the core experience is love. And on radio shows like yours, it's okay to say that and talk about love in that manner. But generally, in, say, the workplace, people don't talk about love. Or if they do, it's romantic love. You know, right. It's that kind of love. They don't talk about the experience of being loved. And therefore, when things go wrong, there isn't a victor there to stand by, let it happen, and then go up and hug something. You know, it doesn't happen.
In my workplace, there is. And Catherine, how does spiritual love change us?
Let me see. There's an exercise I have in the book, a meditative exercise, where you start off by looking at some object that's in front of you. Let's say that round object that's in front of you, the mixture there, the silver one.
That's the microphone stand.
Microphone. So you could take a look at that, and I'm looking at that now, and I'm thinking, I like the colour of that, and I like the shape, the smooth contour of that. So can I look at that and not think? Not judge it, not say, I like it, I don't like it. Those screws coming up out of it, make no judgment about it and see what it starts to look like. And quite often, our visual perception starts to change. We start to see beauty in objects. Try doing that with your own face in the mirror. It's a lot more difficult. Or if you really, really want to be challenged, try stripping naked in front of a full-length mirror.
Oh, God, please. Yes. I can't look at myself naked. I don't know how my girlfriend does it, but I can't do it.
So it's that battle of self-acceptance and self-love that says, yes, I have this big belly hanging out here. And I'm not, are you making fun of me right now?
No.
Well, I love me. And no matter the way that changes you, changes the way you are in life. Even if people talk about acting as it, fake it till you make it. If we weren't around for one day, even faking it, that we are love, how different would we react? We may not actually react in anger when people don't go on our Facebook page and write a compliment.
That's true.
Because we're loved anyway. We don't need them to show us love or respect. We have it within ourselves. And that's how radical awareness can change who we are.
It's interesting how the way that family dynamics and friendship dynamics and relationship dynamics work. Just a quick example, I have a mother-in-law, 97 years old, who I had a weight loss surgery a few years ago, and I lost 180 pounds. And even though I lost 180 pounds, and she was impressed at the fact that I lost 180 pounds, she'll look at me and say, "Are you still losing weight, honey? Did you put a couple of pounds on, honey?" And just, so being the mother that she is, mothers do that. I have a tendency to do that. So she's reinforcing my old negativity about myself, or not reinforce. She's trying to reinforce that old negativity. Maybe not doing it deliberately, but just in the way that the relationship of that nature takes place, mother to child, and so on. So as kids were growing up, and we're not smart enough, not fast enough, not athletic enough, not a good enough singer, whatever the things that parents have a tendency to negatively reinforce in their children, and not doing it, I don't think out of meanness of spirit, just the way they were brought up, and just repeating the patterns over and over again. So we have this negative reinforcement coming from family and friends and so on and so forth. Radical awareness helps us step outside of that relationship and recognize that is not about us, that's about them.
It's almost impossible for a child to step out and say, "You're in a bad mood today. This isn't about me, this is about you. Let's take a break." No child can do that. So they absorb it. They absorb what they're told and start believing it's who they are. I had the weight issue as a child, too. That was the thing my mother focused on. And I thought I was enormous, And I'm not skinny bitty, but I'm not enormous either. I never have been, but I thought I was. And it was impossible to stand back and say, my mother had a thing about this. It wasn't me. But as an adult, those buttons are still being pressed. So when somebody throws something at you about, you gain a few pounds there, it's like they're throwing a hat at the wall. There's a hook there for that hat to hang on to. And what we have to do through awareness is identify that hook and take it out of the wall. And then she can say, you gain 5 or 6 pounds this week or this month, and you'll just say, no. And it washes over you like she might have said, it was raining today.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything. But when there's a hook there to catch on to, that's the problem, and that's where awareness comes in.
You know, I want to share something with you, Captain. My son, he was my best friend in the world. He's 9 years old. He's my little mini-me. He tells me a month ago, I recently lost 60 pounds. But when I was at 60 pounds heavier, he tells me, you know what, Dad? I really love you fat. And you know what? I just hugged him and kissed him because he didn't give a damn that I was a big fat piece of shit. He just wanted to hug and kiss me and tell me that he loved me, you know? So with that, I've lost 60 pounds since then, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Our guest tonight is Catherine Dowling. Her book is Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life. Catherine, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and more about your work.
Bookshops, Amazon, bookshops, iStore, and do connect in with my website because there are lots of articles on the website that I think are interesting. And I hope other people would too.
And give your URL, please.
It's CatherineDowling.com.
Thank you. And you're listening to the channel called Second Sight Radio on the DTN Wicked Radio Network, video simulcast on TeslaWolfMedia.com. Back to our host, Chris George. Chris?
All right. I want to know, what keeps us stuck in our comfort zone, even though that zone might be far from comfortable?
This is one of the biggest barriers to moving with awareness is the fear of change. The comfort zone is what we know. It's like years ago, I used to, when I was a child, slept with 5 or 6 wool blankets on top of me to stay warm. Because I grew up in Ireland and it's cold and damp. And you get used to that weight, even though it is pinning you into the bed. Then I started getting down comforters and duvets, which are really light and just as warm as 5 or 6 blankets. But I noticed I was able to transition to duvets, but my parents weren't. It was just too light. And very often, we can see that something might be better, but we can't go there because we're so used to what we have. Even, people who are living in seriously abusive relationships fear moving on. There are legitimate reasons to fear because people become violent when the person they're abusing is leaving. But people spend years in relationships where a step into the unknown is too frightening. And I think that we kind of instinctively know, even if we don't consciously know, that when we take that first step, we don't know where the second step is going to take us. And so what we know is safer than what we don't know. And so that's where the practice of trust comes in. That's the key to making change.
How do we deal with fear of change? I think that's a really good point. How do we deal with it?
Well, apart from the experience of trusting that all will be well, we tend to think of change, the first step, as being huge. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a tiny little step. The first step can be simply recognizing that there are other possibilities in life. And that if we want to, we might move towards them. So that's the first step, not moving. Just recognizing that we might move. We have the option of moving. That's the first step towards change. And if we can calibrate the steps so that they're very, very small, it's a way of overcoming that fear of change. And then on the other hand, on the more spiritual level, you can do your meditation practice, your breathwork practice, but pray. Prayer is very important to people, and it's very helpful. And that they can pray to however they conceive of their God, knowing that that God is with them, on their side, and will help them along. But change is not easy for a lot of people. It's really not easy.
That's a fact.
Was it Einstein who said doing something the same way and expecting change is the definition of insanity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody can, nobody do make those changes, and that's a very hard concept for people to get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know, how do people reach a state of radical awareness? Is it hard? How hard is it? It's got to be difficult for many people.
Good question. First of all, it happens spontaneously to a lot of people. A lot of the experiences I have they just happen. Mm-hmm. Through being open to them happening. But some practices help us along. And meditation is one of the big ones. People have to find the type of meditation that suits them. Sitting, saying mantra doesn't suit me at all.
I'm with you on that 100%.
But getting up and walking in nature and doing it very, very slowly and mindfully so that I'm feeling every muscle move and I'm noticing everything around me, but without judgment. So like noticing the microphone, but not saying that's pretty or that's not pretty. Just noticing it's there. That's it. And 15 minutes of doing that, and I get into a very peaceful state. For some people, ironing clothes is meditation. For some people, dancing is. You can lose your mind in dancing. You can let the thoughts go and just really be fully in that movement. And for some people, music is the way to go. There's prayer, if you have your concept of God. There's breath work, one of the best ways I know to reach that state of expanded consciousness. Those are all practices that you can engage in. They don't necessarily guarantee because you cannot push your way into it. You let go. You surrender into it. And mostly what you're surrendering is your thinking. You're suspending thinking. And for some of us to do that for a minute at a time is quite an achievement.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Let's actually do a little exercise in breath work for our listeners tonight. Just something simple that they can all participate in to get a sense of what that's like. And I just want to say, if you're operating heavy machinery, driving a motor vehicle, at the stove or anything of that nature, either turn this off for a few minutes or discontinue that activity and participate, but don't do both at the same time. We will not be responsible. And that's my little disclaimer. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. To do it, I would recommend that people are seated comfortably, non-interrupted, and seated where their back is supported so they're not slouching. And to close their eyes, if they feel comfortable closing your eyes, and bring your awareness to your feet. And feel your feet on the ground, wherever they are. Bring your attention to what's on your feet, your shoes, your socks. How does that feel against your skin? What's covering your legs? How does that feel against your skin? Bring your awareness right up to your thigh, and your hands resting on your thighs. What's the waist like? Point of contact in your thighs and your legs. And bring it up into your lower back. Feel how what's your lower back feeling like? And imagine base of your spine, sinking into your chair. Feel it getting heavy and loose in the chair. So bring your attention to your chest. Feel the air come into your chest. Feel it expand your lungs. And exhale, feel your lungs contract. Take 2 or 3 breaths, feeling the air come in from your nose and mouth, down into your lungs, back out. Very pleasurable feeling as you can feel it in your earth. In taking slightly deeper breaths, in through your nose, down through your throat, into your lungs. In your body, heavy in the chair, around, slowly in from the outside. Imagine every inhale you breathing in love. Kind of love Christmas from outside. Kind of love that doesn't matter what you look like or sound like or what you do for a living. Love for who you are. Breathe it in. Imagine what it would be like going through your day in the night. That's love. And when you're ready, breathing it back to normal and open your eyes.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you.
That was nice. I enjoyed that. All right. Ms. Dowling, I would like to know what other techniques help us reach spiritual awakening and radical awareness.
Basically, meditation and prayer and doing what makes you feel alive. Sex, for example. I didn't hear your last yes, but tantric practices help people reach expanded consciousness and the state of oneness through sexual activity, not necessarily orgasm. But if you get really peaceful looking at nice art, that's the thing to go for. Whatever makes you feel centered in yourself. And forget about all the chatter that's going on inside the mind.
I like that.
Exercise, but that's unlike choice.
Catherine, how does awareness affect our value system?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of times we have values simply because we need to belong. We need to belong to a group. So we can have the value that a certain level of income and a way of dressing and a social life makes us important. And so our value would be success or achievement. We have values like patriotism. We have all sorts of values that are not necessarily in themselves negative or bad. what they do is separate us from others. They put us into our little groups where we belong, and other people are outside that. And that's the opposite of oneness. I find that a lot of people have a kind of an inverse value system around poverty. And that people who are poor, if a judgment made, it's their own fault, they're there in that position because they're this, that, or the other, or they're homeless for various reasons. If you're in a state of oneness, there is no separation, there is no judgment like that. And therefore, you can go up to talk to people that you would not normally talk to. And when you encounter people who are very different from yourself, that's when you become challenged to change. Now, for me, my value system will keep me separate from very right-wing conservative politically, people that way. But if I were to know that they and I, regardless of our differences, have the one essence, and I really need to listen rather than get angry or get irritated. Just listen, and that's what my experience. Then I can be changed, I can be challenged, and I can grow as a result. So, in that way, oneness challenges their value system. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have values. We all have values.
But without doing that, our values can actually hold us back from the opportunity of becoming fully engaged in life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We stick within the world that we deem to be of higher value, or that little world that we create around ourselves because of our values. And therefore, we're cocooned and we're not fully engaged. We're not fully engaged with experiences that can challenge us and help us grow. So in that way, the value system can be detrimental. We all have values. We value certain things. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with it, as long as it doesn't isolate and entrench us and make other people wrong or less than. Awareness challenges that whole dynamic, because you cannot experience that kind of spiritual love and still feel separated from other people, or still feel in any way superior or more important than other people, or just different. Yes, we're different. The difference doesn't have to be barriers.
A lesson that would serve well, unfortunately, in the context of what's happening in many areas of the world today.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Chris?
Okay, I want to know, why do some people seem to have life so easy, lots of opportunities, and then others have no luck at all?
I find this really an interesting topic. I don't know if you ever heard of a British illusionist called Darren Brown. So he's got lots of stuff on YouTube. But he did an experiment with a British town in Yorkshire, where he and his crew went in and decided to test the issue of luck. And they went in first, and there was a statue of a dog there. They put out the rumor that the dog was lucky. And so, sure enough, they put up a camera near the dog. People started coming on and touching the dog for luck. Mm-hmm. But they found people in the town that said, I'm never lucky, nothing ever happens to me. And they experimented with this. One was a butcher who did meat near the meat shop. And he's the one who claimed most, nothing ever good ever happened to him. They experimented by sending him a scratch card, like a lottery card. All he had to do was scratch it and he won the prize, because it was set up for him. He wouldn't do it.
Wow.
They then upped the ante and put a £50 note on the ground in front of him as he was walking out of the shop. He walked right by it.
Wow.
And then they set up, one of those big display trucks with a message on the side with his name, and said, call this number. And he ignored it. And so they really showed how people make their own look by being open and observant. They did the opposite with people who said they were looking, and you could see what they got out of it because they were open and observant and just took opportunities. If we had tunnel vision and things, I'm not looking, we miss so much opportunity.
Wow, that's amazing.
It really is.
The fact that people are so conditioned by their belief systems that they can shut themselves off from so much in life.
Yeah. I mean, you probably know that old story of the flood and the person on the roof of their house and calling it God, rescue them, and God comes along very boats. And they say, no, God is coming to rescue them. They drown. You get to heaven, and God said, why did you stay on the roof? And he said, because I was waiting for you to rescue me. And he said, but I sent the speedboat, I sent the rowboat, all those
The helicopter, everything. Yeah, that's the truth. That if we look, all these things are there in front of us. It's like James Redfield's book, The Celestine Prophecy, that if we're open in our paths to receiving information, that information will be coming, and that will help us to improve our life, better our life, and improve the world, actually, if we all grasp onto each of these opportunities that came our way.
Just follow what the gut instinct tells you. You've got to be aware of the gut instinct to have to.
You're right, absolutely. Chris, why don't you take 25?
Okay, I want to know, why do disagreements seem to follow the same old patterns with the same result, and how do we change that?
Well, you brought up a very good example of your girlfriend and her child.
Right.
As we get into relationships, friendships, children, parents, whatever the relationship is, we try to develop a dynamic. And we find out what works with each other. And we find out how to get what we want. And we're not doing that probably not deliberately or not maliciously. It's just that the dynamics develop. And over years together, we can develop patterns where the life goes out of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Just following the same old pattern. Again, it's just about, I found, is being able to stand back when you see you're in a pattern and examine it and look and see, what am I doing here? How am I teaching this person to treat me this way? How am I teaching them? I don't have kids myself, but I've worked with enough and been around enough parents to see the dynamics of parenting. And I'm thinking of one person in particular who continuously warns the kids. You're going through your room, you're going to be grounded, you're not getting out if you don't stop this behavior. And the kid doesn't stop because they know the threats are empty. Nothing to happen. And that's how that dynamic happens with adults as well, is how we teach other people to treat them. We've got to stop our pattern, not theirs. Can't do anything but theirs. We've got to stop ours. And becoming aware of it is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we can't do that in the moment. We have to take time out and deal with ourselves rather than doing it in the moment until we get to the point where we've changed enough that in the moment we can actually change our behavior.
It's very interesting that as part of my path and my awareness, I used to be someone who had to respond to everything that everyone else said, whether or not it was meaningful, was contributing to the conversation. It just seemed like I had to have my 2 cents with everything, and not necessarily argumentative, but if someone brought up a point, I would add to that point. I felt the need to add to that point. And I've gotten to the point in my life, through the awareness of the fact that I was doing that if something pops into my head, I stop and I think, is what I'm about to say going to enhance or contribute to the conversations and the wisdom that's being shared or exchanged, to the ideas that have been shared or exchanged, or do I need to say anything and just keep my mouth shut? And it is so effective, especially in business. When we're in a business conversation, and you do that technique, the old expression is, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice, speak once. And a lot of people have a hard time learning that.
One thing I find is the reaction that happens when you do change the behavior. I mean, I used to be very much somebody who didn't speak my mind. And when I started breathwork as a client, as opposed to being as a therapist, that started to change. I began to stop holding back my opinions and stuff. And one friend took me aside one day and said that I was changing and it did not suit me.
Wow.
Not a good change.
Wow.
So that was a mild version of very often when you begin to change, the people around you really start pulling you back into the pattern.
Absolutely.
And it's important to stay true to yourself and say, this is changing. Now, that's one of the fears of change, because when you start doing that, when you start changing the pattern, you don't know where that's going to end up. And that's, when we talked earlier about fear of change, that's an instinctive thing that we have. You start changing something, everything else is going to have to move to accommodate. And we can't control that. We can't know where it's going. But we have to be true to ourselves. If stopping saying things, or in my case, starting to say things, is being true to ourselves. We have to follow that.
Absolutely. You know, I can really identify with that, because when about 30 years ago, in this path in my life, when I recognized and became aware of the changes that I had to make, it ended up costing me friends. It ended up costing me family members, the connection with family members. It actually ended up ending in my first marriage, because of the fact that I recognized that I was in an unhealthy relationship that was detrimental to both myself and my ex-wife, and that neither of us could grow or progress if we stayed together. And so it was a very, very difficult decision to come to, but I recognized that it's something that had to happen. And we're actually both better for it.
That often happens when a marriage breaks up. It's often the best thing that happens.
Absolutely.
We've resisted for so long.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask you, because we never asked you this, how did you get interested in this topic?
Through breathwork, and then back in about 10 years ago, I had a huge series of losses in a very short period of time. My job at 14 years died, then my parents died, my marriage ended, and I kind of just bottomed out. Nothing was of much interest. I ended up going on a retreat to the Center for Action Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is the place I never thought I'd end up. And I had a lot of experiences there, spiritual experiences and awakenings, and it helped me also understand my own religious background, even though I had abandoned it. And that is how I got interested in writing this book, because I felt here is the missing piece from the psychology that I knew a lot about, and it's taking it down one seamless step further into the world of spirituality. And that's how I got to writing this book.
And finally, we'd like to know who would benefit from reading this beautiful book.
Anybody who wants to feel more alive and wants to feel more that they can co-create their own life with life itself, that they can be a player in their own life. And that we just want to look inward rather than outward for peace, for love, and for satisfaction and happiness.
Beautiful.
That covers a lot of people.
Beautiful.
Sure does.
Her book is Radical Awareness, 5 Practices for a Fully Engaged Life. Catherine, please tell our listeners one more time how they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
Bookshop, Amazon, iStore, and on my website, catherinedowling.com, where they'll get lots of other information as well and articles to download.
Well, Catherine, we want to thank you for being our guest tonight. You were outstanding. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And next book, you got to come back on.
Thank you very much. And I will go on to Facebook immediately and write something nice about you.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Look,
I knew I liked this lady. She's awesome.
and not only that, she's observant, she listens, and she remembers.
Yeah, she's awesome. We appreciate this. We appreciate you. You were phenomenal tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, Victor, who do we have as a guest next week?
Chris, next week our guest is Bill Hall, and he's the author of the book, The World's Most Haunted House. That'll be
nice. That should be real fun. All right, well, listen, everybody. We're here every week trying to make the unbelievable believable. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
What a great show.